I'm Eric Chemi, and this is Politely Pushy. Dan, thanks so much for joining me. You are the CEO of Phrasee, but you're the brand new CEO of Phrasee. I think this is the shortest tenure of someone that I've talked to on the podcast in terms of being a CEO, but like literally just having the job and, measured in, you probably could measure it in hours, right? I mean, certainly in days, but hours, it wouldn't even be that many hours when you add it up. So you've been in tech for nearly 30 years. You've seen a number of tech trends in your time. What was your earliest experience with AI now that you are officially a CEO of an AI company?
That's right. You could count it in hours, but yeah, I can definitely count my time in tech in years and decades. I actually started off in manufacturing technology, and I don't think that I can't really think about AI or machine learning or the genre as really being a factor there. Really, the first time I came across AI or sort of machine-driven automation, I guess, was I worked for a period of time in the early 2000s with service desk software, and at the time there was a development called Next Best Action, which was being used by folks working on a contact center, and they would engage with the software, and based on the customer's preferences, purchase history, perhaps information gathered on the call, the technology would dynamically suggest and propose other things to continue that customer's relationship with the brand. And that was quite a big deal then, and obviously more sort of rules-based rather than rules-based machine based recommendations rather than perhaps machine learning or AI as we know it now. But that's the first time I can remember it.
So before we talk about why you joined and your role and everything, just briefly to tell the audience, what exactly does Phrasee's product do, and can you share an example of it?
Yeah, sure. So when you go to your phone and you see a communication from a brand, that might be from a pizza delivery company suggesting that there is a deal on at 6 p.m. on a Friday or game time on the weekend, or perhaps it's a recommendation from one of your favorite fashion brands, or maybe it's lipstick replenishment or anything like that. These sorts of communications, whether they come to you through an email or an SMS or a push notification or whatever on a web browser, those short form language pieces of content, they may be created by copywriters, so humans actually producing this short form language, but there is an increasing opportunity for those to be generated by machines with increasing level of intelligence over time. And we have seen in the last several months this explosion of activity and potential benefit or innovation around large language models and tools like ChatGPT and Bard and Meta's Llama models and things like that. And Phrasee's been in that industry and in that world for a very long time, nearly a decade now. So certainly ahead of the curve. But it's the sort of thing that you can experience easily as a customer, like I said, because that typically is coming to you through your interaction with the brands.
Oh, that's very helpful. I'm glad to hear that example, because I'm thinking about all the times I've been exposed to content like that. And you never really thought, is this AI written? Is this human written? So we'll talk more about that in a second. But what drew you to Phrasee, right? Like you said, there's a lot of AI companies out there. There's a lot of these, let's call it deal presentation companies too. It's been going on for a while. Like, hey, there's a brand, they want to get in front of a customer. They've got this deal for you. And I remember companies that would do it through your credit card, right? Like, oh, it's not a discount, it's a reward, right? And they would try to change the language around it to make it feel like an upsell rather than a lower tier product. So what specifically drew you to this Phrasee opportunity in a world where AI is exploding all over the place?
I suppose I came from it one side and from the other. One side is I've been in marketing technology for just over 12 years. And I was there as the technology evolved out of email or out of channel silos. And what I mean by that is technology was built to serve a channel purpose. Technology that sends emails, another piece of technology that sends push notifications, and another bunch of technology that does for your web or desktop type experience. And then there was an evolution there, because humans or consumers, people, we were all suddenly just interacting with everything on our phones. And so it didn't matter if it was an email or a push or an SMS, it was going to be through our phones. And people have preferences. So, there are some brands or some types of engagement that email is very well suited to. But, if you're going to get that recommendation for your favorite pizza at 6 p.m. on a Saturday, you're probably not going to open your emails to see that, certainly.
Which itself is an odd thing, right? Because the historical path still matters, right? Because email was more of a on your computer, longer form, work related things. So you don't open email on Saturday night to worry about a pizza deal. But when you're on your phone, it doesn't matter if it's an email or an SMS or a WhatsApp message, or it's like, it is odd to me that we still are stuck in these habits. And maybe the next generation won't be, right? Because to them, everything will have started on the phone. So it all looks the same, but go on. I appreciate what you're saying.
Well, yes and no. So even though email and SMS and push are on the phone, that doesn't mean to say that your preferred way of receiving that message from the brand is an email or a push. They may be on your phone, but maybe you're just going to use the push or the SMS. I can tell you right now, regardless of the message, my kids aren't opening emails on their phones, right? They're not doing push either. If they don't get it through Snapchat or Instagram or WhatsApp, they're not looking at it, period. So it's the point is that there was an evolution of the technology to meet the individual and their preferences and the way they interact with the brand, when they interact with the brand, and so on. That was a major technology change. It was an architectural change from technology that was designed to perform the function utility for the channel to technology that was designed as an architecture to not be concerned about the channel. The channel, it can be any channel, doesn't matter. So that was the first shift that I saw. And then of course the second shift is just this huge tsunami of AI content models, companies' interest. I think we all share the experience that more than 6 months ago, AI was kind of interesting, maybe a little bit kind of geeky, and we certainly wouldn't probably put any financial bets on too many AI companies like a year or two ago. It just hadn't hit the mainstream, and now, of course, it has. And I think it's politically risky now for executives of enterprises to not have an AI strategy, to not be exploring these new tools. At the end of the day, this is a new industrial revolution. It's like the robots have arrived. And the point is, how as an enterprise then do we access this new set of tools and technologies? How do we scale it into our operations in order so that we can use it and benefit from it? And how do we learn to trust it? Because right now we don't trust it. We just know that we've got to figure out a way of using it. So those two things together were very powerful for me, and that's how I ended up here.
Did this come about? And maybe it's too personal of a question. Were you looking for the next gig? Were they coming and finding a bunch of people and say, hey, let's interview 20 people? Or was it they came and found you? Like, what was who reached out first, right? Who was looking for who?
Yeah. So Phrasee's been around for, like I said, nearly a decade, was clearly a pioneer in this field. I mean, machine-driven language content 6 years ago was not something I would have really paid any attention to or even really thought about. The co-founders had created a company and grown a business and won some wonderful clients and delivered tremendous value. And that was recognized by a private equity group called Capital D. And in March 2022, they acquired the business and said, right, let's now take it to the next level. And then at the same time, of course, like I said, this new industrial revolution has now come about, which has meant that what Phrasee is and what it can be, given the nature of this huge new opportunity that is all around us now, that was something that where they wanted somebody else to lead it with that kind of growth mindset. And I just come off the back of 7 years with a company called Braze, where we grew it from Series B, I think it was when I joined, through to IPO. We took it through IPO in November 2021. And that was the most wonderful time in my career. It was learning and thinking about technology in a different way, thinking about it architecturally rather than just the kind of user interface and its capability. That was a key learning for me. And also, I got very deep into understanding how technology was no longer just performing utility now. Technology was now part of the creative canvas for marketers. So I got particularly close to marketers and how the technology would be used to serve brand strategy. And so that had come to the end of its life cycle, I guess. And so I was looking for a new project, a new puzzle, and the right thing came along at the right time.
Interesting. So then talk about what will your role be now, right? Now you've been brought in, you're not the founding group, right? You're the next generation of leadership as this company goes to its next stage of growth. What does a CEO in your position do? Is it the sales and partnership side? Is it really focusing on the tech details? Is it just morale, right? Like, what are the priorities? Is that priorities that the board gives you? Do they say, hey, this is what we want you to do? Or is it, Dan, tell us what you think we should be doing?
Well, first of all, I'll talk about the employees and the customers, I guess. So the employees are like, who is this guy? So the first thing is to earn the respect and trust of everybody and get them excited about what this business can be, because that's why I'm here. It's important that they understand that. And I am excited about it, which we should keep on talking about. For the customers, these are businesses, and they are a wonderful array of household name enterprises that any company of our size would be envious of. They've adopted this technology way ahead of the curve, and are not necessarily getting as much from it as they possibly could, because I actually think they don't know what they've bought. I think that in many cases, customers think that they have a piece of technology that can just do a better job in, I don't know, an email campaign with short form content than a copywriter. But they don't know where that can go when you start pairing it up with other channels and you start pairing it up with the technology capabilities of a modern customer engagement platform, which is to really move beyond channels and just use whichever channel is appropriate, and then use the power of AI and the power of multiple large language models for massive amounts of creative input, where a neural network is telling you what's going to work where and when and why, and then delivering that at scale. The opportunities for huge returns across many more campaigns than they can imagine is here now. And I can help marry these worlds of modern engagement platforms with this AI-driven content. So I think there's huge upside for customers, and my sort of first job is to help make them aware of what that is. And then for the market as a whole, my job really is to, I think, provide some clarity to businesses that are exploring this space, because I think it's really difficult to figure out, as I said, how to access these tools, how to scale them into your business, and how on earth are we going to trust them? And the reason why that's difficult is because I think it's really easy in any industrial revolution to maybe go about using the technologies in perhaps the wrong way in the wrong place. So I'll be specific. What you can see right now is there are many companies, clients, vendors, anyone, just giving a large language model to their engineering teams and saying, there, go play with that. See if you can just make that work. But that's not what these large language models are really built to do. They are literally built to produce massive amounts of creative copy if you have given it the right information, but you have to figure out how to give it the right information. You have to figure out how to take its outputs at scale, and then how are you going to figure out that it's brand safe, that it's governed, and that it's going to be effective? Like, there's so many questions. So this is not about whether or not we should be using, all these new language models. We need to make sure that we are firstly model agnostic, because there's a lot of change in those models. Sometimes their cost models are now changing. There are maybe potential GDPR concerns. There's all sorts of legislation popping up all over the place. And then maybe I want to use GPT now, but maybe I want to use another one like Hugging Face tomorrow. It's really important to help explain to the marketplace that it is possible to get benefit from these tools if you have the right architecture that sits between them and your operational tools. That is what I'm going to do. And the goals for the business have been given to me by the private equity founders, which I am excited to pursue with the team. And I believe that providing clarity to customers and the marketplace is the first step to get there.
It's funny. So you answered the next question I was going to ask you, which was going to be, what do you think is the biggest obstacle to getting these marketing leaders adopting, leveraging new technology like generative AI? And where do you see the greatest opportunities for brands? Because obviously ChatGPT and all of the ones that have come since, they've lowered the barrier to entry. We're still early in that, we're in that early adoption curve. And a lot of the brands the enterprise brands at Phrasee serve. So I think you got to that right point of like, what are the obstacles holding them back from really going all in on these new tools?
I'll answer that just in terms of approach and in terms of people. So if you think about it just like any other industrial revolution, and there have been many, and this is another one, think about robots that can weld. When robotic welding, and I'm a manufacturing engineer, so I always tend to go into manufacturing analogies. But when robots came along and they said, okay, these robots can weld, welders would have said, well, they can't weld as well as me or as beautifully as me. And welding is an art, right? But if you go in a modern car factory now, it's all automated with thousands of robots. Somewhere between the robots being created and what you see in modern car factories now, businesses had to take a step and lean in to this technology and say, let's try it. Let's figure out a way to make it work, because this is probably the future. And businesses have to do that because that's what innovation and competitive advantage is. So firstly, businesses have got to lean into this and say, we need to find a way. And the second thing about people is I saw a wonderful ad. I think it was by Fiverr, the marketplace, the services marketplace. And it said in big copy, it had a picture of an individual, and that had big copy, and it said, AI took my job. And then in smaller print, it said, to the next level. And this is kind of the point, because this is all about how machines and humans coexist. And there's been a lot of chat online about, AI co-pilots, but I don't think that's quite right, because you have to figure out what the human AI co-pilot process is. And I think, and back to Phrasee has a set of technology, but it also has a set of people that know how to make that technology fit with the client. So it's like we provide the technology and the co-pilots so that the client doesn't really need to worry about it. And so we will teach the client how to coexist with these technologies so that they get the value and they feel safe and they can build trust, and then they get more benefit over time. So I think this is just about the approach and the people.
What you talked about, like taking my job to the next level, I think about some of the research I just saw. Maybe it was in the Wall Street Journal yesterday or something else similar. I thought I saw maybe on LinkedIn today, but they took MBA students, right? Business students, and they said, come up with, great consumer product ideas. And then let's have ChatGPT come up with similar great consumer product ideas. Maybe they were like new products for going back to college, something like that. And then they had people rate, in some survey, would you buy these products? And the the ChatGPT ideas were much more favorably rated. People were much more likely to want to buy these new innovative products that the computer made up, and that the innovation ideas were better from the computer than from these trained business students whose job it is to come up with products to sell to people. So it does make you wonder, right? Okay, if
Yeah,
these MBA students had their original ideas and their training, but then they could use the AI, take their job to the next level.
yeah. If you go into, I didn't realize we were going to talk about pizza so much, but maybe I'm
Yeah.
hungry. If you go back to that pizza example again, these promotions that we all receive, perhaps during an ad break in the game, the businesses that are sending you those messages are highly sophisticated performance marketers. They know exactly what the return is going to be if they send X many messages to X many people that are watching these games, right? It's really scientific. And this now approach to AI is kind of the same. It's firstly understanding and enjoying and benefiting the fact that this copy and creative, if harnessed properly, this is the thing, if harnessed properly, can provide huge uplift and operational benefit in your business. And then the question is, well, then what does that mean for my role? And in this coexistence with the tools, all of a sudden, this is why I'm using the pizza example, there are so many more opportunities then to take your work to the next level in terms of campaign optimization, campaign diversity. Now we've done this, now what's possible, And I think brands are going to see their approach to campaign creative, their approach to what should be machine generated versus human generated. Where can we take optimization? Where can we take personalization? And where are those lines drawn between just allowing machines to do what machines are good at versus what humans are good at? And this, again, back to the Industrial Revolution, that's what they're always all about.
You mentioned, obviously, Phrasee's been around for a lot longer than ChatGPT, right? It's been several years. ChatGPT, as far as the public is concerned, is only really a year old and been working on for a couple of years before that. So what do you think the misconceptions are? The biggest misconceptions are about Phrasee, especially you coming in as an outsider, because it's been around for years before what people ever had heard of LLMs, NLGs, RLHF, all of this. What is the positioning, you think?
So I'm pretty sure OpenAI has probably been around for a while, and those guys have been working on it a long time. So I can't remember exactly when that originated, but yeah, I think Phrasee is maybe perceived to be, that's a tool that, I don't know, produces email subject lines or produces content for push, and okay, that's great. And I don't think it's really understood architecturally what it is and what the meaning of that is. And it's very easy if it's, I suppose, if it's not architecturally understood, it's very easy to say, well, if Phrasee can provide language content, well, then ChatGPT can produce language content, and they can all produce language content. So this is just another one of those things, right? And that's not true, because Phrasee isn't a large language model. It's not going to, it doesn't have the brain that's been trained on all the content on the internet that can produce that volume of creative. That's not what it is. The core components of Phrasee are a controlled set of campaign briefs, like a content map for creative, so that the input process to creative is going to be brand controlled, brand safe, appropriate for the campaign, and so on. And then Phrasee uses that to send to multiple LLMs, so that we are not model specific, we are model agnostic, to get massive amounts of creative input back. So that's the first component. And the second component is Phrasee is a proprietary, industry specific neural network that's been trained on marketing communications by many brands over many, many years, and it knows what is going to work, where and why, what is necessary to make a highly performing experiment that can be optimized. And it's going to suggest suggest all the different variants of the language from that batch of creative that are going to be the highest performing, the best for experiments, and to make sure that pizza company A and pizza company B are not sending the same type of message, because if you allow machines to optimize, that's what they will do. And to make sure this content is going to be diverse across the whole customer set, which is really, really important. And that sort of proprietary neural network, which is then engaging with receiving inputs from all the large language models and then operationalizing that into the business, that is a key architectural component. So you can see this is not about just producing language. And then it goes on to integrate with the modern customer engagement platforms that say, I need a push, I need an SMS, I need a web interstitial. Phrasee will just deliver those. And then, of course, it optimizes if the data volumes permit, if the statistics are going to be useful enough. And then there's a learning feedback loop to the neural network. You can hopefully see that that is a set of architectural components which is important. It's not just about that language output.
Right, right. So much. It's like the more you start to peel, like the onion, like I want to peel more. I want to learn more, because it's way more complex as you start to describe it than what the output product seems so simple, right? It seems like, oh, this is just some easy, short piece of content. I get this little push to, okay, you should try to do this deal or this offer, but there's so much more that goes on inside there.
That's right. Again, the core aspects of this is really trust. How do brands are understandably fiercely protective of their brand. I mean, you only have to do a contract with an enterprise business, and there'll be some pretty aggressive language in their contract about brand and brand damage and liability and so on. This is about trust. The opportunity here is the more that brands trust how the machines are going to work and how they are governed, both within the tooling and with people, the more they can start to turn up that trust dial. And the more they turn up the trust dial, the greater the throughput of machine-driven, machine-optimized content, and then the greater the value and the greater returns. But that is a process, and it's important that the process of implementing these tools and innovating on these tools and exploring where these tools can go is a gradual process. But enterprises need to know that there are quick wins. This is not actually brand new. There are businesses that have been doing this for a long, long time. And as I said at the start, many of the messages that you will receive on your phone would have been generated by machines from companies that were doing this several years ago.
What do you think will keep Phrasee at the top of the category? Like what do you think about what you're doing that is different from somebody else? Like you said, there's going to be a lot of this type of content. I think people will be more aware of it now, but what keeps you in the lead?
So 3 things. The first one being there is rapid movement from legacy enterprises using legacy channel specific tools, sending emails. So many enterprise companies and their marketing teams think in terms of sending emails, as opposed to how can we serve the customer and how can the customer get a better outcome based on their preferences. Businesses are realizing you have to put the customer in the middle. And when you do that, you need an engagement platform that is channel agnostic. And there's a huge movement in enterprises now towards a number of technologies that can provide architecture to deliver on that promise. Phrasee works with those customer engagement platforms. It has the architecture to fulfill content requests at the speed and volume that those engagement platforms require. So the first thing that's going to keep Phrasee growing is this movement towards these modern engagement platforms and the movement of enterprises from thinking in a channel-oriented way to a customer-oriented way. The second thing is enterprises really struggle with personalization at scale. we've all received those messages that say, "Hi, first name, you ordered a pepperoni pizza,"
Right, right.
and you think, seriously, okay. And sometimes it comes across as kind of creepy. It doesn't come across like human language, and there are very few businesses that have mastered that. And the reason for that is because despite having massive amounts of PII, personally identifiable information, brands just still, with the technologies, aren't able to use that for really fluid, human-sounding personalization. That is a huge opportunity for Phrasee. That's something that the team have been working on for a while, and we will be providing a completely new framework to allow these AI tools to really get to work and provide personalized content to individuals. So we're not just optimizing for large volume experiments, we're really optimizing for the individual. And I think that is a game changer. There is no one in the industry that's doing that. And then thirdly, the Phrasee is not really just in the language business, it's in the content business. And because it's in the content business, we're going to see increasing imagery and media coming into the content that Phrasee is working with. As I said, this is about access to AI models, not just LLM language models. And we're going to see us, Phrasee, integrating with and leveraging and providing a scalable operational process to enterprises for all these other models. And as we get more into imagery and rich media, I think that that's really going to be a game changer. Right now, the message might contain text, but maybe the best communication is no text at all and just the image.
And now you can AI
do
create the image too, right? So you don't even need to have an image selected. It can make a custom image for everybody.
Yeah, I think so. Imagery is understandably a fiercely protected and controlled space, and there are some wonderful AI tools, Adobe Firefly, into Photoshop, and their agencies that use those tools to create AI imagery at scale. That's already a rocket ship, and will continue to do so. But it's not effectively joined up with language
right
at operational scale and driven by machines. And there's going to be a lot of opportunity for doing that. And the machines need to figure out, like I said, where do you marry language to the images, and then how do you nuance those two combinations of images and languages to get the best possible outcome? I think that's plenty of runway for Phrasee, and I'm very excited about
if we're doing this conversation 1 year from now, and it's okay, Dan's been in the job for 1 year, what do you think will be the topics we will talk about then?
It will be those three things. We will be talking about the content, we were talking about content rather than just language content.
Right.
We will be talking to a much greater extent about multiple channels. We will be talking about WhatsApp use cases. We'll be talking about a whole array of other APIs or endpoints as and when they pop up. So it will be multiple channels. We will definitely be talking about personalization at scale. And we will be talking about bringing together these worlds of content and rich media and language so that the machines can optimize for both.
What did I not ask you? What else was important enough that you think we should be talking about that I didn't?
I think it's important to talk about the changing regulatory environment. I read an article the other day that said ChatGPT is not designed for the European Union, something like that. And I think we saw it. Italy already banned it. We see the AI Act. We already know GDPR is the toughest data privacy law on the planet. We're going to see the AI Act come out of Europe as well, which is, quite rightly going to control copywriting. And we're already seeing, just about every news organization on earth block OpenAI's crawlers that teach its models. I think that is understand. Partly that is the European Union competing with the US, but I think it's actually bigger than that. I think actually the world benefits from US tech, and I think the world benefits from EU legislation, and I think it just makes it better for all. So I think that is going on whilst we're exploring this. I think we're already seeing that we've seen all these models come on the scene. The excitement in the models has then turned into, can we trust the models? Now we're seeing a kind of reaction to how the models are built. We're seeing the models create different paywalls and cost billing structures. There's a huge amount of change happening here. And at the end of the day, the marketers need to be engaging in this industrial revolution and getting benefits from it. But it's a very dynamic environment. And I think that I can imagine with Phrasee, I was thinking actually, like, as well as, every business has lawyers, but we almost need a lawyer to keep up with the law changing here, in the same way that businesses dealing in PII have data privacy lawyers that keep up with that, that legislation. I think that's a huge other component. And I think there's going to be competitive advantage for enterprises that pay attention, that have partners that help them navigate that landscape, and that manage to gain the benefit, given that there are so many considerations.
As soon as you start talking about regulatory, then I feel like that's its own separate whole podcast, right? That needs to be, we need to set aside a lot more time for that than just one question. And I agree, that's going to be a real game of diplomacy, a completely different set of skills than the technology, right? It's going to be much more about optics, PR, how do people feel about the technology, and what will that incentivize politicians and regulators to do based on how the public's, emotional reaction is to it. So I think you'll probably run into a few of those issues yourself a little bit, but my guess is you're just under the radar enough in terms of what you do in a B2B setting, in a kind of private closed system setting, that my guess is you'll be able to avoid a lot of those major regulatory hurdles. I
think so. So if we were to do a dedicated podcast on that, I'd probably bring my lawyers along with me to help me out with that. But I think that's right. And again, this Phrasee is very much a domain expert. So, we're talking about marketing content, and we're talking about a level of campaign brief and creative control to ensure that the outputs that we're getting from the large language models is going to be brand safe, and is not going to include any content. I think it'd be unusual for it to include content in these use cases that got it into trouble. But it is a dynamic environment, and it is as much an opportunity to be competitive for Phrasee as it is for our customers that are using our technology.
Dan, I love chatting with you. I'm very impressed by how you can really get into the details on it, but then still stay, big picture at the same time. I'm excited to see what you can do. I really enjoy our conversation. So I'm excited, right? Like I want to see what this can turn out to. I'd love to check back in, see how this first year develops, and good luck getting ramped up and hitting that to-do list that I know is a long one for you.
It's a long list. No, I'd love to catch up with you, and thanks for inviting me along.
Thanks for coming on, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you to my guest, and thanks for listening. Subscribe to get the latest episodes each week, and we'll see you next time.